Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Let's Talk About It. Let's Talk About It is a platform powered by Shan shares that talks about pertinent issues of society that we seldom speak of. The topic of discussion today is harassment, whether it be workplace harassment or that of a sexual nature. And who better than to shed light on this than a legal expert? Today I have with me another empowered young lady whose name is Zahrah Vayani. She is a legal consultant and advisor with 11 years of experience before the High Court. And we absolutely love her because she actively works for women empowerment and for women's rights.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for being here today, Zahrah. So let's dive right in. I just wanted to ask you, in your experience and in your expert opinion, what is classified as harassment and what is sexual harassment?
So harassment is very broad, and you've rightly defined it into two categories. Mm-hmm. Now, sexual harassment, of course, is when someone has, in the workplace or otherwise, goes beyond the level of boundaries and level of decency. And sexual harassment can be by ways of, messages, by way of actions, or trying to harass somebody in such a manner in which they feel uncomfortable. And within their being. Okay. Whereas when we talk about harassment in general, that includes good touch, bad touch. It includes where a senior in a workplace, for example, is making sure that someone who is there, who is reporting to them or working under them, is feeling threatened that if they're not listen to them, or if you do not, abide by what they're saying or what they want them to do, that they will be in trouble or the job will be in trouble. Apart from that, it could also be colleagues amongst each other, just making fun of each other also can also be that. It doesn't always have to be the good touch, bad touch thing. It doesn't have to be physical. It can also be verbal. It can be, indirect harassment, that, that's a group of 4 people trying to, make one employee's life miserable for whatever reason. So it is all of that, basically.
Okay, and so there are a lot of, so I was reading that in every organization, there are about 85% of harassment, incidents of harassment. Yes. So, and a lot of people, counter that accusation or whatever with, meri niyat nahi thi, or it was just a joke. So, in your expert opinion, what is the difference between a joke and being harassed or harassing someone?
So the law defines it as being something totally different, right? The law defines, it's got a broad definition of exactly what harassment is or sexual harassment is. Now, niyat is something which is, of course, intention. वो आप ऐसे डिटर्मिन नहीं कर सकते, राइट? बहुत आसान है ये कहना कि ओ मेरी ये नियत नहीं थी, राइट? That's your excuse, that's your way out, and that is the reason why we always say that was there anyone else around? What is the evidence that you have? What was the circumstance like? And even if there wasn't anyone, so a lot of times harassment is done when there's no one else around.
Yes.
Right? So it's one person's word against the other. Now, what also matters is, did they have some sort of background? Some sort of tiff in the previous years or months of working together. It could also be that was there some sort of affiliation, was there some affection towards each other? So all of those things are also taken into account. But some forms of harassment are so common in workplaces that you can see through it.
So, and if you don't mind me asking, and you don't need to share any names or anything, but have you ever encountered a situation that has escalated so much that it's actually gone to, get seeking legal counsel for something like this?
Yes, of course. So it depends, right? Now, so you have a whole system under the Act. A complaint has to be filed. There needs to be there needs to be two committees, an internal and an external, and I'm just going over it very briefly. So internal committee hoti hai within the organization. External is when external lawyers or external counsels also are part of that committee, and they then assess whether this actually has taken place. Now, whatever the findings are, internal key, and then thereafter external. The person, the employee who's wanting to complain is the one who actually thereafter chooses to go to the external, for example. अगर वो फील करते हैं कि हमें वो नहीं मिला, जस्टिस नहीं मिला, या हमारे वो नतीजा नहीं मिला जो हम चाहते हैं, then they can file before the forum, which is the case as you call it, right? A complaint can be filed against before the ombudsman, against the organization or the employer, depending whoever it is. And then it becomes a legal case, so to speak. And that's how it starts.
And so, in your experience, has there ever been a situation, like I asked before, that someone's come to you and what the result was?
Yes. So there have been quite a few instances in which there have been employees who've come in and said, well, we've been asked for sexual favors to be able to be promoted, or to keep our job. We are worried. We want to fight against this. There was a very famous Radio Pakistan case. I won't talk too much about it, but उसमें भी यही हुआ था that there was a lady who was harassed and then it became something, and she got something out of it, which was fine. But the unfortunate bit is that when you talk about your when you go against your organization, are you then, how comfortable are you working in that same space again? And that is something that of course the employee decides. The employer in front of the ombudsman will say, oh, we will not, we will make sure that they come back into the job as if nothing happened. But the uncomfortableness, the everything else, it all comes into play.
So that was my next question. So following all of this would have some repercussions within their career progression or trajectory within that organization. But say for instance that it happened to me, just hypothetically, and I've gone through the whole legislation and the legal action, etc., and I return back to the organization. I feel uncomfortable and I want to switch. Would me having filed a legal case like this one affect me getting an opportunity elsewhere, do you think?
So, one of two things. The first being that, yes, when you come back to the organization, as we spoke earlier, it will be a problem, right? Or you yourself feel as an employee that there is some sort of discomfort, right? Even though that's not what the law says, right? You're supposed to come back and act like nothing happened. But we're human beings, we have emotions, etc. Now, when we also talk about going elsewhere, technically, it's not something that needs to be disclosed. But if it's in the same industry, there are times that, for example, you work in an organization which is a school, and one teacher knows another teacher who knows.
It's a small world.
So and this is just a small example, but it is a small world, and you never know who will be able to who's going to use that against you, or say that that happened maybe. And if for example someone has faced multiple harassment issues, right? So then it could be like, oh, ye to inka aadi hai,
then,
and stuff like that. So that's something that one needs to be very careful about. But it is what it is.
Okay, so my next question to you is that it's usually women who get harassed, unfortunately. But then there's also situations where women, knowing that they are considered to be the weaker sex, even though I don't feel that women are the weaker sex. Some women, or there have been, stories that we've heard or incidents that we've heard that women actually use that to maybe put someone in a colleague in a situation which is difficult for them. Have you encountered those?
I have. But more than a colleague, the one that I sort of, the case that I had taken on was one of a therapist and the therapist is, and someone, a client who'd, gone to the therapist. And the client, because the client had some, personal issue with the therapist not answering her phone, she said, that the therapist went beyond his boundaries, and he was physical. So even though, when you look at this matter, being physical with a client is something that you're not meant to do. But the act that was called to be physical was maybe a little inappropriate, but it wasn't sexual. And when we argued it, because it was portrayed to us by the client that it was sexual, we pushed it into that manner, and we got his license revoked. But then the client stood up and said, well, I was wrong. And why is he not going to work anymore?
Oh, wow. Okay. So it was a personal vendetta.
I've experienced that. And and then as a lawyer, you also feel that, how do you know what's right or wrong? Because we work on proof. We don't work, we try and work on truth as well, but it is what you have before you. So these kind of cases are hard. And yes, as I said, this is one example of where a woman may have, or a young girl, who may have used that against the employer or the therapist in this matter. But anything is possible.
So just coming back, and in the interest of wrapping it up, what is your advice for women and men, in companies, in organizations, on how to tackle, harassment, be it of any nature? How do you tackle it, and what steps should an organization ensure that it has in place, what policies, to ensure a safe working environment for its people?
So under the Act, an organization needs to have the harassment policy. So you're supposed to have a harassment policy. You can also include I've advised to have separate sexual harassment policies as well.
Of course.
Distribute them amongst the employees and the employers, because sometimes the board or whoever it may be. Make sure everyone knows. Everyone needs to know their rights. Apart from that, have a very strong committee in which, if a complaint needs to be filed, then the committee should be there. And the committee should be open to hearing things against the employers as well. The internal committee should be set up already, and then of course you should have an external lawyer or etc. on the panel if you need to have an external committee. So this is basically the framework. But apart from that, it is and have sensitivity seminars. Get those done. Have harassment seminars. I mean, there are a lot of lawyers who are willing to, and I'll say this out. Usually, it's on Women's Day that they say, "Please, aake aap ek baat kar le, ek talk kar de." I don't think it should be that way. The firm should allocate a fund for such seminars where everybody, from the person who opens the gate for you up until the CEO, etc., everyone should attend, and all of them should be aware of their rights and how they should treat others.
That's excellent.
So that is what I think is the best policy.
Amazing. So guys, we're going to wrap this up. Thank you so much, Zahrah, for being here. You really, helped clear out a couple of things that, I was pondering over. And guys, if you have any questions, any queries, we're going to be tagging Zahrah in the caption, in the comments. So please reach out to her for expert legal advice. And till we meet again on another episode of Let's Talk About It.